This is The Baseline, discussing the hot button topics of the NBA. Welcome, everybody. You're tuned to The Baseline. Callie Warrenshaw discussing the hot button topics of the NBA, live and direct from you and yours. And as always, man, just a really active time now that we're on the other side of the 2024-2025 NBA season. As far as the year goes, we're soon and very quickly approaching NBA All-Star Weekend. But if you really count the number of games that have been played, we arguably are at the halfway point of the NBA season. And like quickly before our eyes, we're already going to be talking about, play-in, playoff seedings and, who our perennial contenders are. And, those are still jockeying for positions to try to get into the playoff picture. It's just really amazing how quickly this time of the NBA season has flown by. But as always, man, you always got to have a good co-pilot to roll with you while the NBA flies through. And as always, let me roll out the red carpet to my right-hand man, www.shawsports.net, Big Kahuna PNC, my man, Mr. Warren, out of Florida. What's good, sir?
You know what it is, brother? It's MLK Day as we're recording. Excited to be here. The NBA in full effect, as you alluded to, the midway point of the NBA season. It really did run up on us. It's about to take the jewels. But, there's a lot of great basketball left to be played here and a lot of great conversations as we head into All-Star break. But even before that, the trade deadline just a week before. So a great time to be an NBA fan. As always, you're rocking with the baseline.
So we got a great show on tap for you guys. Hopefully you and yours have been enjoying the weekend, especially. Still have been a lot of exciting games over the weekend. Also, great competitive matchups and games leading into Shaw's favorite time of the week, NBA Rivals Week. I find
it's your favorite time. Don't even try that. Don't even try to sweep that over here. That's your favorite.
Well, listen, I just find it funny. Martin Luther King, instills upon us peace and walk amongst, the shepherd. And then the very next day we're talking about, tearing each other apart. So kudos to the NBA on that as well, too. Well right. Exactly. We got a great show on tap, man. A little bit. Sean and I are going to listen, we've been very cognizant of some guys who clearly are on a mission and they've been keeping receipts. There's some players right now who are on one, and they're going to make it be known that they've been keeping receipts on those who have been casting them away, that this is basically their swan song, and they literally probably won't find any NBA work come the end of the season. And they are obviously...
that's drastic.
Is that drastic?
That's a little drastic.
Receipts. They've been written off. You put on as far as the notes go, written off. I'm just giving people a more, a cinematic visualization of what
I'd say written off and out of the league is two different things. My God, these guys are going to be on the corner begging for change.
Probably resurrect themselves in the G League. You know what I'm saying? They could probably resurrect themselves through the G League.
Wow.
But anyway, we got some guys we're going to talk about that have been keeping receipts and been putting not just our pundits, maybe even ourselves. Maybe we spoke to it at some point before the season began, but they are basically putting the world and everyone on notice that they are still here and they are still thriving in the current NBA season. And then a little bit later on, we always do this. We do our check-in, got our mid-season reports, got to weigh in on some of the the annual season awards and a couple of other little nuggets we like to throw in there to kind of spice it up a little bit to, as our midway check-in, as we always say, before you get them straight A's, the interim report got to look pretty nice. You know what I'm saying? Got to make sure, you butter up the parents a little bit. If they're trying to get you that super NES, you come in strong with those straight A interim report cards.
Man,
right?
People don't know what the super NES. You dated us big time, but we'll keep it pushing.
Okay, absolutely. All right. As always, be sure to get my man Shaw, Shaw Sports NBA. Get at me again, Face Lee. The show's Twitter handle NBA Baseline, available on all the major platforms. You can catch us on www.thebaselineNBA.com to check out not only this episode, but also the great episodes that we always like dropping for your listening pleasure. And then if you see us on the YouTube channel, I'd like to say hello to you and yours. And if you see the blue-white logo on the YouTube channel, that means we're rocking with the 19 Media Group family. 19 Media Group be running these content streets. Be sure to go to www.19mediagroup.com to not only check us, but the plethora of great content creators that are putting it on, man. Whatever your listening pleasures are, 19 Media Group has got it for you. So definitely go to the website and check out all of these guys. Check out their shows. Who knows, man? You might find yourself, you know what I'm saying, like getting down with a new show that you hadn't even realized was a part of the 19 Media Group family. And that's what we're all about, building enterprise in and just basically putting it on for you and yours. So go definitely check this out. All right, coming up, Shaw and I are going to talk about those guys out there that are going to be, they've been having such a really surprisingly great year so far, and they've been keeping receipts, and we've been watching them keeping those receipts. So we'll definitely get into that, and a little bit later on, we'll definitely do a midseason report. But first, a message from PrizePicks. Hey, the big game is almost here, and it's now or never. Don't miss out on the last football game of the season with PrizePicks, the best place to win cash while you're watching the big game. Download the app today and use code CLNS to get $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. PrizePicks is also giving away a free pick for the big game, where one of the starting quarterbacks will only need to throw 1 yard to win. If you're correct on at least one or more stat projection, you can win real cash. Check out the promos tab to tail any of our super sweet Millie Winners big game lineup. If you tail a lineup that goes 3 for 3, you can win a split of $1 million in promo funds. Let me say that again. You can win a split of $1 million in promo funds. Will Patrick Mahomes pass more than 1.5 TDs? Will Saquon Barkley rush for more than 95 yards? These are the type of picks we debate when making those prize pick plays. Just download the app and use the code CLNS, as PrizePicks is the best way to get action on sports in more than 30 states, including California, Texas, Georgia, and Florida. Remember, the promo code is CLNS. PrizePicks puts the members first, so all withdrawals are fast, safe, and secure. When my picks hit, I can get my money in as quick as 15 minutes. Remember, download the app today and use the code CLNS. That's Charlie, Larry, Nelly, Sam, to get $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. PrizePicks, run your game. More Baseline, Cal Lee Warren Shaw. Don't go anywhere. All right, Cal Lee Warren Shaw, Baseline NBA podcast. Time for us to talk about players who, at the beginning of this season, we were really hesitant in determining whether or not their season would be a successful season. Some of the moves that have taken in the offseason really had us questioning what role some of these guys are going to be playing, whether it's on a new team or even the same team that they have. And even through the course of the year, determining where their impact is going to be and have on that team to just say, you know, hey, they're really an important piece. So there were a couple of players, Shaw, and I know sometimes we kind of miss on this because a lot of it is more predicated on saying, is this more of like a hoops redemption situation? And it's not so much about it being a hoops redemption as much as it is recognition about what that player is and the choice that some of the players make for not just the betterment of their career, but also how they acclimate themselves to the team that they're playing on, the situation that the team is currently in, what the overall goal is going to be. It's pretty interesting that there's a couple of guys out there who arguably we didn't see them having a really successful season given the circumstances that they were probably putting themselves under with the teams that they play for. But alas, they've said, no. We're going to figure out a way to make this happen. We're going to figure out a way to make this work. Our numbers are going to speak for themselves. And these dudes have been keeping receipts.
And to some degree, some of the guys we're going to talk about are like, all right, well, we know who they are. We kind of know what they're about, and we're not really expecting much from them. And I think, as you so eloquently put, they've not necessarily surprised, but some people have kind of resurrected themselves in terms of the court of public perception. Some guys have boosted their already low, very low trade value. Now you should have got in early because now the price of the brick has gone up, as they say. So I think it's just important to highlight some positivity even with this. And that's not to say everybody on this list is on this team that is as a title contender, because that's certainly not the case for one guy for sure. But I just like to see that, hey, you know what? They didn't take last year or even the last couple of years downside in the way that media and I think even the league itself was kind of portraying them and say, okay, well, you know what? I'm just going to be this less than player. I can still contribute, and I can contribute at a high level in whatever the role that team needs me to do at this point. That's why I think these guys deserve some props.
Absolutely. So let's like rifle through them. I love that the first person you put at the top of your list was Russell Westbrook. You look at what Russell Westbrook has gone through over the last 3-4 years. It's really remarkable because I don't think anyone ever has questioned the the competitiveness, the drive, the style and the energy that Russell Westbrook plays. One thing that we can always say about Russell Westbrook, he will never cheat you or the game, right? He will always come in giving you everything he has, and especially when healthy, he runs the well dry. He leaves it all on the basketball court. And I just find it amazing that over the last few years, some of these coaches, some of these organizations that he's played for have not been able to figure out a way to utilize and harness that where it's productive, not just for the team, but also for Russell Westbrook himself. And I think we were talking about this at the beginning of the year. Russell Westbrook electing to go to the Denver Nuggets. I was like, man, I think that this is a sneaky good play for a team like the Denver Nuggets. And I wasn't quite sure on how the Denver Nuggets were going to try to utilize him. I wasn't sure whether or not he would figure out a way for him to be able to play with a Nikola Jokic, and if Jamal Murray is healthy, and what that might mean for Michael Porter Jr. And obviously, the beginning of the season, you saw a lot of the rough patches that were exhibited from this team. Does that mean that they have righted the ship? By no means. But you can clearly see that Russell Westbrook's impact on this Denver Nuggets team has far outlived the expectations I think that people have had about whether or not the Denver Nuggets can at least give themselves a chance to be as competitive as they had been even for last year, only to get ousted. Like, if you need a guy to come off the bench, give you energy, if you need a guy to even start and get things kind of in order, Russell Westbrook is figuring out a way to do those things. And you see the incremental improvements here and there with the Denver Nuggets, and hopefully Mike Malone will fully figure out a way to get this team clicking on all cylinders so that you see the most competitive version of the Denver Nuggets through and through, something that they suffered last year, not having anything left in the tank to see it through for them to get themselves to, eventually the NBA Finals.
Russ has figured out a way to play, work himself into the starting lineup. Some of it is because of Denver's injuries, right? Murray's been banged up, now seems to be kind of hitting stride. Gordon has really been in and out of lineup for a good majority of the season. So some of it has just been out of kind of necessity as Michael Malone has tried to figure out ways to make the lineup itself work. But in the most recent stretch, Russ we're at the halfway point, and he's actually started half of the games that he's been in. And it seems to be working fabulously, I think, with he and Joker together. Part of it too is that it gives the Denver Nuggets another playmaker on the floor at the same time, as opposed to where Russ was supposed to lead those second units. And now it takes some pressure off of Jamal Murray, who's not a bad playmaker, but it's not his first mode of operation. Let's just kind of put it that way. I like the fact that Russ has been able to get there. And there's some out there, some other reporters and pundits. It's like, well, if he's going to play with Joker, of course his plus minuses are going to be better. And Joker makes everybody better. And they just kind of want to always continue to detract from what Westbrook does. Listen, for what it is, I'm not saying he's setting the world on fire. He's always going to be a guy who's going to be able to score, double figures and then get 6 or 7 assists and 5 or 6 rebounds. It's just kind of like, you can pen those in, even to the day he's probably 40 years old, because there's a certain level of energy and hustle that he's always going to bring. But his off-ball cutting, again, and his obviously his secondary playmaking with Joker being out there has been something Nuggets have been able to figure out and utilize to their advantage, and now have them looking like a pretty formidable team in the Western Conference when we were almost writing them off, especially in the first week or two of the season.
Yeah. Real quick, and to add to your point, what I especially love about what Russell Westbrook is doing, especially to what you're saying regarding Jamal Murray, teams have figured out how to defend the Murray Jokic, pick and pop, pick and roll situation where Jokic just sets up in the middle of the circle and distributes and does other. So, and I'm not saying that Mike Malone has not done anything to change that. I'm sure that he has attempted to do that, but it's very difficult to adjust and to make those type of adjustments when the rest of the other guys that are on the floor clearly are not guys that move north and south. Michael Porter Jr. does not move north and south. Aaron Gordon does not move north or south. All of your players are like all around the 3-point line and then kind of move in accordance to where Jokic, is dictating certain things. You need someone that just has an effort mentality and it goes north and south literally all the time. And yes, Westbrook doesn't shoot the 3 ball very well, but you know what? Sometimes it's not what's required. And one other thing that I think is important as well, too, Shai, I want to bring up because you mentioned him. You usually can book him getting like 5 or 6 rebounds a game. Let's not forget, outside of Nikola Jokic and only on when there's really solid nights from Aaron Gordon, this Denver Nuggets team does not do a really good job of rebounding the basketball, right? You don't expect that from Jamal Murray. You don't get that a lot from Christian Braun, who's still kind of coming into his own, right? So a couple of years ago, that was something that they didn't have to worry about because they had such a deep team, right? The Jeff Greens, the Bruce Browns, the Contavious Caldwell-Popes, those guys would get into the paint, they get in the trenches and get rebounds and salvage Jamal Murray from having to make those kind of commitments, right? They don't have that. They haven't had it the last couple of years. And so now you got that back with a guy like Russell Westbrook. So those second chance opportunities, those opportunities that you typically would need in order to get those transition baskets going so you can get Porter out to shoot those open transition threes or fast break threes as well, wherever we want to call them, or Braun or any of those guys, that doesn't happen unless you got a guy like Westbrook on that court. And to see him still actively doing that, you can see how that is so much helping this Denver Nuggets team. Because if not, it's always on the shoulders of Nikola Jokic, or on a good night when Aaron Gordon is not banged up and is actually committed himself down in the trenches.
Well, I'll back up your point and kind of close it with this. The Denver Nuggets are leading the league in fast break points. The Denver Nuggets, with Nikola Jokic as the best player in the league, leading the charge, right? But you wouldn't out there, no one would stake, Jokic for Usain Bolt out there on the basketball court. So the fact, I think a lot of that is the Westbrook effect. The fact that he is able to rebound and then sprint up the court for anybody to kind of get some open looks, even if it is you hit Joker kind of on that secondary break, if he's trailing the play, or he's getting it out there to a sprinting Christian Braun, or maybe a Jamal Murray. I'm not saying it's all Westbrook. Michael Malone has had to figure out some stuff to maybe make some tweaks in their offense in essence to be able to do that. But him being in that lineup on a regular basis, and the fact that he can rebound as well as he does from the guard position and then initiate offense, the Denver Nuggets are first in fast break points this season. Crazy.
Looking golden. Shout out to our girl Jill Scott. Got them all on that R&B track right now. Got the neo soul in the Denver Nuggets. You're tuned to The Baseline. Callie Warren Shaw discussing the hot button topics of the NBA. Talking about players that are keeping receipts. Let's go ahead and move on to the next one, Shaw. I really like this one. You know what I'm saying? Your man, Ziggity Zach LaVine. You know what I'm saying? Holding it down for the Chicago Bulls. You know what I'm saying? Like, what more can be said? I think a lot of people like to downplay like his overall game. Partly because he never stays healthy enough to be on the basketball court for us to truly believe that he's going to have an impact with whatever team that he's playing for. You look at this Chicago Bulls team, I'm sure that Billy Donovan wants to hug him and then wants to you know what I'm saying, like bury him in the locker in the back room and stuff like that. So if the Bulls could just finally tank, it's because Zach LaVine cannot help himself but be just damn good on the basketball court. And he's keeping receipts on people who think otherwise.
Yeah. Zach is 23 and a half a game. You're like, oh, that's, kind of like maybe not all that sexy or whatever the case would be. But what you do need to pay attention to is the 51% from the floor and the 45% he's shooting from the 3-point line right now. 51% is the highest he's shot like in the last 6 or 7 seasons, in addition to obviously being healthy. He's figured out a way to let the game come to him, even with emerging guys like Kobe White and even Josh Giddey there now to kind of help set him up on some plays. Vooch is still there, getting some shots and obviously some rebounds and things like that. But Zach has just matured, and I think he's heard all the rumors and said, hey, this is not a winning guy. And he's really kind of fostered that now into a space like, what? Yeah, I'm good at scoring the basketball. I can even do some secondary play creation, but I don't need to be a ball hog to do any of those things. I can fit within the proverbial offense. And when he gets hot, he gets hot. He's still got great balance on his 3-point shot, great balance on his jumper in general. I'm not saying this to like, cap, as people say, to say now, like, I just was never as down on Zach LaVine, I think, as everybody else was. And I was like, yeah, he's been injured. Yeah, you maybe not think he's like the biggest winning player, but he's a good dude. And there was a couple of seasons ago here, he was winning games for Chicago, even with DeRozan there. Listen, I like Zach. I love this kind of pseudo redemption story, at least for the season. And this is a guy where there was like second round picks and basically just salary cap match that people were saying. Second round picks for a guy who gives you over 20 a game. And now look what he's doing, over 20 a game on 50% and 40% from the 3-point line. And he shoots the free throws as well too. I listen, if I'm Chicago, I'm selling as high as I possibly can. And it may still not get you a first round pick, but I think you can get extrapolate a little bit more equity now out of this if you're the Chicago Bulls. Either way, if you don't, I think Zach LaVine has definitely had a bounce back season.
My bad here. Do you think that what Zach LaVine is doing is giving an opening for the Chicago Bulls to figure out a way to keep him on this roster, grow with this roster, and maybe help to assemble a couple of free agency pieces that might help them take another step forward? Look, are they going to usurp the Milwaukee Bucks? No, right? They're still not good enough to do that. I think you probably have a better opportunity of moving Vucevic before you move Zach LaVine. But I think only in the sense that what Zach LaVine is completely giving you right now is so hard to find, right? So if you're trading on that part of it and saying, all right, we want the highest value possible, think about who is actually out there that are actual willing trade partners to give up whatever talent that they're probably going to be grooming anyway. I think this comes down to the maturity of Zach LaVine. I'm not saying Zach LaVine was not mature. I'm just saying Zach LaVine has always been caught up in a bad situation where it has always seemed to marginalize the potential of the talent that he could actually show you when he's playing around other individuals who are not quite on the same wavelength of what the Chicago Bulls were intending to do when they made the moves that they made a few years ago, right? And it's not to say that he can't get along with the likes of a DeMar DeRozan, but clearly there was a different strategy involved in what was taking place, or else they probably would have never made that move to happen to begin with, right? So all that I'm saying is maybe now there's a different way that you look at how Zach LaVine can help the Chicago Bulls and maybe figure out another retooling, so to speak, or readjustment, so to speak, of the right combination with what he's giving you now with what you want to see from the Chicago Bulls. I'm not saying that he should be a cornerstone player, but what I am saying is how do you let something like that go that's giving you what you're getting right now this season? Because I feel like he could probably do that over the next few years if you're not demanding too much more than what he's already shown you.
Yeah, I mean, I think at 29 years old, he's not necessarily somebody, and I know you're not saying this verbatim, but you're going to start to rebuild around. I think the Bulls do still need to tear it all the way down. And that could include even as much as Kobe White. Like, I mean, it really could. I think they've made Patrick Williams available in trade. It's never really seemed like it's going to pan out for dude there. Vooch is Vooch, and the Warriors are sniffing around, and anybody interested in big man is sniffing around there. And Zach has obviously been mentioned in trade rumors previously. I think while he's built his equity back up, you do need to strike while the iron is hot, because as much praise as I want to heap upon him, he at least more recently has had a history of injuries. So you don't want that to flare up again, and now you can't get the value that you could get right now, especially within the next couple of weeks. Remember, they shut him down last year around this time or whatever it was. So, okay, maybe he would be able to get back, and then the injury just never healed. And then they were just like, all right, well, there's nothing we can do because nobody's going to trade for air quote damaged goods. He's rebuilt his value, in my opinion, and I think the Bulls should try to move him on. And if they don't this year, then that's okay. But I'd be surprised if he's a Bull going into the start of next season, especially with 2 years left on his deal and that player option.
All right. Let's go ahead and transition to the next one, Shaw. Our man, your boy, Jordan Poole.
Everybody's my guy and my boy. Lately, I got a large family, and I got a large
family. You have an extended young son family there. No, let me stop. But anyway, Jordan Poole, right? Like, and I know people are just like, come on, what do you mean? Like, he's playing arguably on one of the worst teams in the NBA, right? With the Washington Wizards. This is true, but you really can't argue with some of the performances that Jordan Poole has put on. And I know there have been quite a few some Shaq and a fool moments as well. But I would argue Jordan Poole has put up some pretty gaudy numbers given the circumstance, especially in a situation where everybody knows that you're arguably the best scorer on that team, even if you do have Kyle Kuzma, right? But you are still his best scorer and still able to pull up north of 30 points, per game on many a nights. It says something. It means that clearly you have not been completely shook up by the notion or what has happened or what transpired that led you to be outcasted to the Washington Wizards. And clearly it's a shame that the, executives of the Washington Wizards have still not done their due diligence in putting a really good quality team with the type of talent there. But needless to say, Jay Poole, he's been balling.
Yeah, well, he's averaging the career high that we thought he was going to be averaging last year. We thought, everyone thought he's going to go there and be basically James Harden light, going into Washington, as when Harden left OKC to Houston. Now, that was obviously lofty in terms of expectations and categorically wrong and incorrect. But he did not live up to any semblance of that. His confidence really did seem shot. The minutes were weird, I think, with he and the coach, and he just looked timid out there on a regular basis. He is back. He's not overshooting. He's only averaging one more shot per game than he did than last year. The minutes are still about the same, and the actual field goal percentage is the same, 41 and 43. So, I mean, there's some marked improvement. But where the biggest difference is the 3-point percentage. He's getting back to what we thought he could be right now, shooting 40% from three, on even 2 more attempts, even more volume than he was last year. So the types of shots he's taking are more threes, but he's shooting the threes at a higher percentage, is getting his average up to roughly about 22 points per game. Yes, on a terrible, terrible, terrible basketball team. They are god awful, and they will be in the segment that we're talking about here in the next half of the show. But I just want to, take some dirt off and stop besmirching the name of Jordan Poole. He is who we think he is. He's a volume scorer, but he's doing it in a way that now I think is more acceptable and looks more like the guy that left Golden State than the guy who arrived in Washington last year.
Yeah. And I think the one thing I want to add on to this, Shaw, because you brought up all of the great points about this. Listen, say what we want to say about the Washington Wizards as bad as a team. They are scoring, right? And in this climate of the NBA, that's still going to mean something, right? The Sacramento Kings, as much as we wanted to give praise to how much they had overachieved, part of the reason is because you had a defensive-minded coach who embraced the talent that was on that roster, and he let those guys loose, and they arguably were one of the best offensive scoring teams, within the last 10 years, right? Like they were even rivaling that of the Golden State Warriors. It made for must-see TV. And I'm just saying, like, if you are an organization and it's about trying to win a fan base, win some level of excitement, you got to have something excitable for people to, get up for. And I'm sure the people out there in the DMV are just like, all right, look, at least we got a baller. At least we got somebody out there that's going to make it entertaining on a night in, night out basis. And the next thing I think that comes to play is, all right, some of those guys, they're not great players collectively as a team, but there are some guys that you can actually see some opportunities there that it may be worth keeping them on the roster. If Jordan Poole playing next to them, you see quality games being played by those guys, right? By the Kubalis and, and others. So, my whole thing is that I think he is starting to become a better player because you're starting to see that the team, will go out there and they will compete at, even knowing that the stigma out there that they're a bad basketball team, they're going to compete. And they're going to try to score the basketball. If they lean into that aspect of it, there's some excitement there. There's some reason for people to watch them. And I think that's going to open up the doors again for Jordan Poole, not to go back to his ways to what you're saying before, but to really give himself an opportunity to tell people is like, yeah, I am that damn good of a player. This isn't a fluke. We can make certain things happen. We just can't make it happen on a night in, night out basis. We're not there yet. And I think that's the reason why I think I want to give Jordan, Poole his flowers a little bit, because he could clearly be doing his solo mission like he is. And as god awful as that team is, it's a boring brand of basketball that nobody wants to watch. They're winning some games because even while he's doing what he's doing, the rest of those guys are out there scoring the basketball. So him being out there, he has to be also partially responsible for that. And we got to give him credit for that at least.
Yeah. Career high in points, career high in assists, career high in steals. Again, bad team. career high in 3-point percentage as well. Listen, it's a decent season for Jordan Poole, especially from what he was coming off of. And a lot of people wanted to just say, you know what, this guy is not a good basketball player at all, and not worth the not worth the trade that Golden State ended up doing. I think the Warriors, again, I don't think they regret the move, but they could still utilize a guy like him, especially in the role that he was playing for them. Hey, let bygones be bygones, but kudos to Jordan Poole, and hopefully he continues on this upward trajectory this season and beyond.
Absolutely. You're tuned to The Baseline. Callie, Warren Shaw discussing the hot button topics of the NBA. Coming up, time for us to do our mid-season reports. We'll weigh in on, some important awards, where guys are checking in right now, and some important markers for teams, what they look like, where they be falling into the quote-unquote pecking order of the NBA elite. But first, a message from League Pass. Are you craving nonstop hoops action? NBA League Pass is your ticket to the ultimate basketball experience. Enjoy live games, on-demand replays, and exclusive behind-the-scenes content across a variety of devices. With NBA League Pass, you'll get more games. We're talking regular season and select playoff matchups. More features, including multi-view angles, in-depth stats, and behind-the-scenes stories. More access. Catch your favorite teams and players anytime, anywhere. Stay up with the NBA like the Baseline does. League Pass is for the fans who live the game. Sign up and type at link.nba.com/LP19MG. That's link.nba.com/LP19MG. More Baseline, Callie, Warren Shaw. Don't go anywhere. We are back. Callie, Warren Shaw, Baseline NBA podcast. Time now for us to do our coveted mid-season report, contenders and honorable mentions. Listen, while everyone's trying to slide up in everybody's DMs, we'll be bringing out the HMs in this part of our segment here. So time for my man Shaw and I to kind of, weigh in on what's going on as we hit the mid-season mark. And let's start right off, Shaw, with most improved player. Definitely contenders and mentions for this coveted award: Cade Cunningham, Evan Mobley, Tyler Hero, and Norman Powell.
Yeah, so we're more or less for these that we are going to tackle. We're not going to tackle everything in the award category, but some things that I think are interesting. And this is more or less based on the most current odds that are out there by the bet makers out there. So these are the guys who I think have the strongest case by that. Maybe there's some wild cards out there, but for my money right now, the most improved player, I think, is Cade Cunningham. He's on the cusp, I think, of making an all-star game as well too. Evan Mobley is obviously a great selection because he's finally actualizing some of the potential that many of us have been clamoring for in his only 2-3 years in the league. I feel like we heaped a lot of expectations on him early, but at the end of the day, he's finally delivering under Kenny Atkinson. But while Tyler Hero and Norman Powell, great guys, having great seasons as well, I think Cade Cunningham actually deserves this because this Pistons team, as we're recording here on MLK, they actually got a great road win against the Houston Rockets after they slipped a couple games before that. But Cade is leading the charge there, man, and I love everything he's doing in there. And that team is rallying behind him. So it's not just the stats, but it's the leadership qualities that he's showing as well too, that I think can capture him this award as long as he stays healthy.
Yeah, man. Listen, the reason why I feel like Cade Cunningham is going to walk away with this is and I wonder about this more than anything. So hopefully one time we'll pull some stats on this, but I'm wondering Cade Cunningham and fourth quarter scoring and what he's doing in late game situations. It's not to say that Evan Mobley doesn't have that potential, but clearly that ball defers to Donovan Mitchell, right? Like, he's the guy, and he's proven he's the guy. And the Cleveland Cavaliers are practically just blowing teams away, that it doesn't even really matter. What I think matters is the impact that Evan Mobley now has, to your point about the upside potential that he's finally showing you. Tyler Hero, I think we've all been waiting to see Tyler Hero be that guy, especially given the criticism that he's suffered over the last couple of years, the lack of maturity at times in the way he's handled it. You definitely have seen another level to him, which I can certainly appreciate. And we don't know what the situation is going to look like for that team when they move on from Jimmy Butler. But when that does happen, definitely look at Tyler Hero, because that's arguably going to be, he's going to be the guy offensively, right? Like, I know we've been waiting, Shaw, that this is supposed to be Bam Adebayo's team. Certainly it's Bam Adebayo's team as far as the energy, rebounding, everything like that. But I think from a scoring standpoint, depending on someone to hit those quality shots, it's all on Tyler Hero. And I'm not saying that he's wishing his man Jimmy, off any sooner than necessary, but I think he is slowly showing you that he's ready to take that helm and make things happen. And what more can be said about Norman Powell, bro? Like the fact that he has somehow stepped in to be that number 2 guy, given the circumstances, because everyone still believes it should be Kawhi Leonard's and James Harden. I don't know if we're going to ever see that version of Kawhi Leonard. You know what I'm saying? But I definitely think that when it comes to Norman Powell, he has proven that at age 30, he could be that guy to score that basketball, which I find very, very remarkable, given the years of him being a third, fourth, off the bench kind of guy to step in and do what he's been able to do for Tyronn Lue and that team. Crazy. Absolute crazy. All right, let's transition to 6th man of the year, Shaw. Got some heavy hitters on here, man. And you got an up-and-coming second-year player who we were not tabling to be in this conversation, but has very much deservedly been putting himself into that. Peyton Pritchard, DeAndre Hunter, and Amen Thompson, one of the Thompson twins.
Like I said, brother, I'm going off the odds. I didn't pull these out of the hat and just say, hey, I'm throwing these names out here. The odds maker says these are the front runners for these awards currently right now. And Amen is actually now starting a little bit more because Jabari Smith Jr. has been out of the lineup. Amen had been putting up some pretty monster numbers, roughly, had a crazy 5-game stretch. I was like, yo, who is this? What's happening here? Then I was like, oh, he's starting now. And the minutes have changed because I was like, yo, it was a bit much even for me. But I love Amen and what he's been able to do off that, off that Houston Rockets bench for the most part. Him and what are they called? The Terror Twins, him and Torrey Eason when they come into the game. But with the starting nine now, not quite sure how long he'll qualify, if Jabari Smith is going to be out for an extended period. And with DeAndre Hunter, just what he was, especially in the stretch right before the NBA Cup, 20 points a game, like every night. It's just what it was. But there is no better bench scorer. And let's keep it a buck. We say this all the time. The 6th man of the year award is always who scores the most buckets off the bench. It's not about who has the most assists, rebounds, the best plus minus, or anything like who gets buckets. And that's been Peyton Pritchard this year, leading the league in points off the bench total, leading the league in 3 points off the bench by a landslide. Really giving that Celtics second lineup a bolstering guy who can really get it done and can create for some guys here and there as well too. So I agree with the odds makers right now that Pritchard is that dude. But I think if Amen goes back to the bench role, it could get dicey here. And it would be awesome to see because Amen is not a natural scorer. He does kind of all those intangible things. So I'm not rooting against the Celtic here, but I'm just saying Amen would be a nice change of pace if he were to kind of keep things up.
Well, my sentiment is this. Keep him. I'm in the starting lineup because I'm already salty as it is. I had him on my fantasy team and then I had to drop him, and I now regret that I even did that. But I also blame Ime Udoka because they should have been starting this kid or giving that kid more minutes from like the longest time, and he was dancing around his minutes quite often because I guess maybe he still believed Jabari Smith was that guy for them, and then he exploded. I forgot what night it was. He just freaking went ballistic. That he had like 17 points and 14 rebounds and 3 steals and something like that in like 26 minutes of play. And I'm like, you're still weighing minutes on this kid? Like, what the hell is wrong with you? You know what I mean? Like, so, but again, you finally are starting to see Ime have confidence in the young man, and that's exactly what you're getting from that, right? Like he is showing him, he's like, coach, I need to be on that basketball court, right? I need to ride with this team, especially now in the 4th quarter. He seemed to take some significant minutes out there on the court for the Houston Rockets, which I think just bodes well, not just for his future, but clearly in the conversation of 6th man of the year. Again, I agree with you. Peyton Pritchard is going to wind up being that guy. And I'm just like, don't put Alman back in the damn don't put him back on the bench. There's no reason to do it. It's not Celtic bias or nothing like that. But if I'm Ime and I'm getting what I'm getting from Alman, like the way he's doing it right now, no, man.
That's tough. I don't think Jabari Smith Jr. is suited to be a bench guy. At least not right now. I think he needs the reps and he needs the confidence, as a starter. So while I'm not debating if I think who has a better overall impact on the team and might even have a higher ceiling going forward, but sometimes it's about a chemistry and a fit as well. And so that's where I would slightly push back on that notion that I don't know if I would love Jabari Smith Jr. coming off the bench. And I think Amen is more naturally suited for it at this stage of his career, but it won't be long before Amen is a really 82 game a night starter in this NBA. But we'll see what Udoka does here moving forward.
Absolutely, man. Absolutely. All right. MVP. I think it's a foregone conclusion, right? Who the heavy hitters? Jokic, Alexander, Antetokounmpo, right? Who really to you has the best path forward to winning that MVP when we get to the other half of the season?
I'll keep this short because it's a conversation that all podcasts and people talk about on a regular basis. SGA has actually kind of moved in front of Jokic right now for odds because of the narrative aspect. It's just like, hey, we're tired of giving to Joker. Let's give it to somebody else. OKC is number one in the Western Conference. Obviously has an amazing case. If I was betting or not betting, if I was voting, I would give the Joker. He's literally having another historic season, despite every season being historical. And now look what he's doing with a team that I still think is less than, despite his help and buddy in Westbrook now. But he's far surpassing what and the workload has been insane, more than it's ever been in his career. But I think SGA will have the inside track as OKC can continue to win it because of the voter fatigue that's happened with Joker.
I think it's because SGA is just showing you he's a clutch player. And right now he's showing you that smooth is sexy in the NBA. Okay. The way that he just seems to effortlessly score that basketball and the way that he seems to effortlessly impact the basketball game, we're starting to see that more and more. I don't know if it's because there's definitely been more of a push to feature the Thunder on primetime games that we're actually getting to see this. But it's just very interesting to me that when we talk about SGA, he's the kind of guy that, you look up and you say, all right, first quarter, he's probably got 7 points, 1 or 2 rebounds, maybe 1 or 2 assists. And then by the end of the game, he's got 36 points, 5 rebounds, 7.5 assists, 3 steals. Like he somehow seems to fill up the stat sheets, but it's just when through the course of a game, if the Thunder are in it and it's against a really good team, somehow his imprints are on that and he's going to be given the opportunities for him to have an impact. Now, will he just outright blow the doors off? He doesn't do that kind of as a Jokic type of situation. But I'm looking at the smoothness of his efficiency that I think has resurrected the conversation about why he should win it, more so than I think it's about the fatigue that people are having about Jokic, because Jokic is still putting up those monster numbers again. But I don't see where Jokic's numbers are being highlighted on those primetime games. It seems like he's putting those numbers up on games that you see on the blotter again on NBA TV, which to me is a little concerning because, again, you want your best players in the NBA featured as much as possible on a nightly basis when they're doing amazing things. And I just think people's eye candy right now is on SGA because he's showing up in those big games, win or lose. He's still showing up in those big games. He's putting up those monster numbers.
All right, so you got SGA as the MVP at this point in the season. I got Joker. We'll see how it ends up landing out. But I think it bleeds into the next topic of conversation. And this is not necessarily an award, but just overall a thought process on kind of where we're at right now. So here on the Baseline NBA podcast, who's the most impressive team for us here at the midway point of the season? Is it that SGA-led Oklahoma City Thunder team? Is it the Cavs who just seem frigging unstoppable, just offensively, just dusting people? The point differential right now, their offense is ridiculous with the improvement of Evan Mobley in tow as well too, or a sneaky pick like the Houston Rockets, who currently do sit second in the Western Conference. Nobody saw that coming, and I'm really interested to kind of kick this one to you here, Cal. The most impressive team to this point of the season: Cavs, Thunder, or the Rockets?
Logic tells me it's the Cleveland Cavaliers, simply because I think we've been waiting for the anchor to drop and this team to start to sink. This team start to go through struggles. This team, and clearly you can see that this is the influence of Kenny Atkinson on this squad. This team, they take a loss and they right back on it and whoop somebody else's ass the following night, right? This is the kind of team that I think, Shaw, we said, this is not where, if you're the Boston Celtics, you don't want to give this team any kind of space or leverage to believe that they're on your level. And because the Celtics have been struggling, the Cleveland Cavaliers have shown you a model of consistency in the way that they score, how they score, and they're even showing you that they can play some defense. Now, are they the best defensive team? Not really, right? They're on certain matchups.
Our top 10 team. So
they're top 10. What I'm saying is on certain matchups, I think over the course of a 7-game series, we'll really see what they're going to lean into more to get them through, right? Like if you're playing the likes of the New York Knicks, you're playing the likes of the Boston Celtics, there's some matchups there that I wonder through a 7-game series what that team is going to lean on if you're the Cleveland Cavaliers. It's going to say, all right, no question. I will say this, though. They have definitely shown me that they can play both. It's a question of where can they lean on them most confidently when a team matches up and counters something that they're doing. But if we're just answering this question, Shaw, the most impressive team to me by far is the Houston Rockets. Because even if I said to you that
all that and it was the Rockets, I thought for sure going with the Cavs.
Because at the end of the day, Shaw, at the end of the day, right? The Houston Rockets arguably are where we thought the Dallas Mavericks are. And they don't have anybody on their roster, right? That you can basically say, oh, that's their Kyrie Irving. Oh, that's their Luka Doncic, right? Like this is Ime Udoka putting together a team that might arguably have, like, they're playing house money. They've got nothing to lose and everything to gain because the pressure is going to be on the Thunder. The pressure is going to be on the Nuggets. The pressure is going to be on all of those teams. You don't want a team like this with and even the Memphis Grizzlies because they got John Morant, right? You don't want a team like this now entering the chat. And I didn't think that they were ready just yet. I thought Ume would have to continue to mold some of those guys. The fact that he's got all of these guys and they're not even at their level yet, they're playing like this is absolutely ridiculous. And if I'm in the Western Conference, I'm more afraid about the Houston Rockets more so than I am afraid about what the Cleveland Cavaliers are doing with what they're doing in the Eastern Conference.
I wouldn't go that far, but I will agree with you in terms of Houston being the more surprise team, especially the Cavs being like a number 4, number 5 seed perennially. All right. A jump to number 1 at this stage, although they're dominant, is surprising. OKC we kind of saw coming anyway, but this Rockets team most people had them at the play-in. Maybe you had them as high as maybe 8. I don't think anybody had them above that line. Even myself, I was like, listen, I thought this was a play-in team, and I trusted the coaching of Udoka. But to have them as a number 2 seed at this point in the Western Conference is absolutely absurd. It's a bigger surprise coming from where they were if you compare it to coming from the Cavs, where despite how dominant the Cavs have been. So I agree with you in the Houston Rockets for sure.
I'll say this, Shaw, because the next one I think you can appreciate. If we weren't gonna put them as one of the most impressive teams, then this next one I would have definitely had them in. But they are doing so damn well. You have to be impressed. So our next section is our Weebay what the F team, right? Like, given what this team had looked like at the beginning of the year and the lack of confidence that people had about whether or not these teams are going to be successful, they straight up have us looking like Weebay on the wire.
I'm there now. I got it.
Yeah, exactly. So our Weebay teams, the Atlanta Hawks, Detroit Pistons, Sacramento Kings.
Holistically, I'm going to say Detroit. While I think Sacramento's had a nice turnaround under the tutelage of Don Christie, I haven't seen enough yet to kind of really get there on it. So I'm just going to continue to give flowers to the Detroit Pistons. While Atlanta's also a nice pick, the Pistons, Kate Cunningham, as they're fighting for a playoff thing, they just beat the aforementioned Rockets, as I said earlier in our show here. On the road, I just love the vibes happening in there. JB Bickerstaff, Kate Cunningham, and company. I think to me that's the biggest. Didn't see that coming.
Yeah, absolutely. I think I'm leaning a little bit more on the Atlanta Hawks because of Trae Young. Because I'm like, oh, didn't see Trae Young coming, right? Like he like Omar up in this piece. got everybody, or I'm saying, or like when that moment that Weebay was thinking, he said he didn't realize that girl in the back seat was 5'0". He's just like, oh, you know what I'm saying? Like I was not expecting this good Atlanta Hawks team, given the circumstances and the turnover that the team had experienced, losing Dejounte Murray and such and stuff like that. What Snyder and what Young is doing, to me, is just absolutely impressive. I just want to make sure I call that part of it out, that with all 3 of these teams, man, they're giving us one of those, oh, I didn't, type moments this season, which I love, because you don't know what the outcome is going to be, but they clearly have put themselves back in the conversation of play-in, possibly playoff-bound type of teams. All right, Shaw, let's do most disappointing teams. This one shouldn't be hard at all, right? The Philadelphia 76ers, yeah, pretty disappointing. Phoenix Suns, yeah, pretty disappointing. Timberwolves and the Dallas Mavericks round out our most disappointing teams.
Yeah, Well, for me, it's the obvious. It's the Philadelphia 76ers and the Joel Embiid, Paul George saga, whatever the F is going on, with their health and all their injuries and whatever vibes Nick Nurse is unable to curate to have this team in any semblance of real threat. While they were able to put together a pseudo decent stretch, about a couple of weeks ago, like around Christmas time, it's back in the dumps. Embiid's back on the shelf again. PG's missing games again. Tyrese Maxey's out here kind of like a lone wolf. He's more or less just chucking at this stage. Sixers to me have been by far and away the most disappointing. And while there's still time for them to turn it around, I don't believe there's a lot of faith in that the juju of this team and the health of this team is going to be intact for them to do anything significant, despite the talent that is clearly there.
Yeah. I honestly think that when it comes to the Sixers itself, the Jared McCain thing, I think, hurt them so much more
Yeah,
than
good point.
all this other craziness that's going on. Because then at least Maxey would have had somebody that he can see and move and do something with, that Nick Nurse can have some semblance of hope. And now he just has to ride with whatever he's got to ride with. And to your point, to me, I think overall the Timberwolves, because there's so much, I can't put my finger on why this team is so inconsistent. They really do have a good team, and in the landscape of the Western Conference, I can't see that the team should drop off as much as they've dropped off for what they achieved last year. So it either just speaks to the fact that most of those players on that roster totally overachieved, or it really this new roster is just clearly not all together and probably won't be all together until sometime next year. I mean, they may have to shake things up again in order to put a team around what you were getting from Anthony Edwards and Gobert and Conley and those guys. But it'll be so disappointing to see this as a team that could probably get knocked out of the first round, or may have to fight themselves through the play-in in order to participate in the playoffs. Couple of quick ones real quick, Shaw. Purple Heart team. Now, I put the Orlando Magic, and when I say Purple Heart team, I mean bravery. Like literally bravery for even being able to compete. And I think you would say by leaps and bounds, the Orlando Magic take it far and away. But I put the New York Knicks on this one as part of my Purple Heart team. Because what was the one thing we keep talking about when it comes to Tom Thibodeau? Running his players into the ground, running his starters into the ground. And the fact that the New York Knicks have managed to get this much mileage out of the roster that he keeps running out there. Because again, he's still running with a pretty thin lineup. The amount of minutes, I had to make sure I give the New York Knicks their kudos, man, because I don't know how they have managed to be able to still have their starting five for the most part competing to still win the number of games that they're winning. And he has still not backed off on these minutes when it comes to his start. It's absolutely amazing to me. I want to make sure I give the Knicks their props on that part.
Yeah, I love it. I'm gonna throw an honorable mention in here. I'm gonna say the Grizzlies. They've dealt with a multitude of injuries themselves too, and their second and third string guys, from Scottie Pippen Jr. to Jay Huff to Sante Aldama, guys you're just like, who? Those guys have been hooping. They've been balling, holding it down when Morant or Bane or Marcus Smart or whoever has been out of the lineup. So I like that teams continue to just push forward despite all the injuries, because you've seen a team like Philadelphia kind of going the other way, and they don't have enough in their reserves in essence to kind of keep them at the tops of their conferences.
Absolutely. All right, Shaw. Capture the flag. The race for Cooper Flagg is on. Toronto Raptors, New Orleans Pelicans, Charlotte Hornets.
Yeah, and with the Jazz and Blazers in here too, the Wizards are the far and away runaway, right? So, but we know the new rules say the top three teams have the best chances at the number one pick. No longer if you're just the worst record, you had the most. The top three chances will have worst three three teams would have the best chances at the number one pick. So I think joining the Wizards here, the Pelicans are probably disappointed. They're probably one of the more disappointing teams that they didn't expect to be here. But does it allow them to reset things here, especially if they trade Ingram or, God forbid, trade Zion on, or whatever the case may be? I think who's going to be joining the Wizards in the Cooper Flagg sweepstakes, if you will, to capture the flag. I'm going to say Toronto, and I'm actually going to say the Charlotte Hornets. While the Jazz and Blazers could also strip things down to the core, where it's basically you and I running out there and they lose games in abundance towards the latter half of the season, I think it's been pretty putrid for for Charles Lee here in Charlotte. And I'm just not a big fan. And whatever the hell is happening in Toronto, they put guys out there who I don't know. And I'm an avid NBA fan. There's players I'm like, who is that? So, and I'm not trying to be disrespectful, but I just don't know what's going on in Toronto right now. I think Scottie Barnes is going to get shut down pretty soon here. And it might be good that they try to bring some kind of like superstar changing level talent in there to play alongside Scottie Barnes here. So I think the Raptors and the Charlotte Hornets are going to be right there.
Yeah, man. I think those are some good points and stuff. It's kind of remarkable because when you do look at the Toronto Raptors and some of the players that they have, these are transient players, and they had a really surprisingly competitive year last year, but it's just gotten worse. And I don't know if that's just the head coach is just not in tune with the roster that he has to work with, or maybe to your point, Shaw, there's so many no-name guys that it's hard to implement his style of basketball with guys that just don't know how to go out there and execute it in the way that he was hoping to do. So just really interesting, Shaw. And again, it's a race for the flag. Ultimately, that's what it comes down to.
Let me say this one thing real quick. I think the scariest option is if New Orleans were to not blow it up and they were still somehow able to do this. In theory, they'd still have the most amount of actual talent from this group to then inject a Cooper Flagg into, which could propel them a little bit faster than anybody else on this team. But we know theory and practicality with the New Orleans Pelicans do not go hand in hand. Somebody's always injured. Somebody's always out. Zion's always dealing with whatever Zion is dealing with. But in theory, that could actually be really interesting if the Pelicans were to get into the number 1 seed next year somehow or other.
We should have had we should have added as one of our mid seasons, probably make a note of this for next year, but who's got to go? Right? Like who should be on the outs, right? If you're Joel Embiid, if at this point, right? Like we were talking about it as something to preview regarding, where teams are going to be and what the likelihood is. And obviously stuff regarding the trade deadline, that's one thing. But I think the other thing as well too is given where the teams are and given the circumstances of what their stars have and have not been doing for their teams, which one should go first? You know what I'm saying? Like literally, like who should just be, hey, we tried, it failed. Let's move on from this, right? And I bet you donuts to dollars, we would not be talking about Jimmy Butler more so than we'd probably be talking about either Joel Embiid or Zion Williamson, given the seasons that both of these guys
stay on the got to go train, man. I got to clip this and put this out there, man. I don't know if Philly fans would agree with you just yet, but it is a very interesting situation to watch here as the season progresses, and then how this season actually kind of finishes out. Do they just say, what, it's not working? He's a year removed from MVP. Like it's not that long ago, but it seems like dog years, since he's been healthy and been able to kind of lead the Sixers team in the way that they want to be.
But you're looking at it from a health perspective. I'm looking at it from a leadership cornerstone player perspective. And let me tell you this. I think that is what is really bothering people, bothering the Philly fans more than anything. It's just what it is, man. It's just what it is. And I don't blame them for that. I think they have every right to be upset and angry and frustrated by that because unfortunately, the Philadelphia 76ers don't own Philadelphia, right? It's the Eagles, right? It's the Philadelphia Flyers. In that town, you got to hold your own. And they're measuring you up to the other players who are out there putting in that work, doing whatever it takes to make their franchises, their team successful. And when you're just not seeing it from a player like Joel Embiid, who obviously everybody recognizes as one of the great players that are in the NBA, and when healthy is an MVP candidate year in and year out, but his demeanor and his attitude and his approach to things, I think is what's rubbing people off the wrong way. And I just don't think when you have that baggage of being a part of the process, when you have that baggage with you and it's really not amounted to anything, there just gets a point where it just starts to wear thin on the fan base and they're just not having it. So that's
I think you're trying to push Sixers fans in that direction. That's what I
think. You think that I'm a rah-rah in that?
I think you are trying to push these dudes off the bridge because I don't know. I need to be in Philly radio to kind of hear what are people talking about, but you are beating that drum hard and I'd love to get some. You know what?
Because
I'm gonna make it my point. I'm going to get us a Philly reporter on here to kind of dive into that topic, especially as the trade deadline kind of comes in here to kind of see if there's smoke where there's fire, in the conversation that you're bringing up with the Joel Embiid.
Yeah, but
stay tuned here on the baseline.
But anyway, awesome show all together. As always, my man Shaw, just bringing out the worst in me. I appreciate that. You know what I'm saying?
Joel Embiid's bringing out the worst in you, brother.
No, man,
That's got nothing to do with it.
you giving me my Drake Fields worst behavior. So I appreciate that as always.
Man, good stuff as always. But hope our fans and listeners enjoyed this one. Hey, man, at the half, our midseason report here on the Baseline NBA podcast. A lot of great conversations, man. We kept the receipts. Some players are keeping the receipts as well, too. Let us know who you feel like has surprised you more than would have expected going into this season. And then again, who's your most improved player, MVP, all of the stuff that we discuss here on our At the Half NBA midseason report segment, man. Great show, brother. Can't wait to do it again next week.
Absolutely, brother. For the Baseline, Callie, Warren, Shaw, we appreciate you guys. You know we do. And I do appreciate Joel Embiid, too. Don't get it twisted.
Hey.
We'll catch up with you next time.